Hello, everyone, again, and welcome back to another episode of Did You Know Genesee County History? Here with Holland Land Office Museum Curator Rachel Bellis and myself, Executive Director Ryan Duffy. So we're very excited to have everyone back to share another fascinating story of the history of Genesee County, and one that you may or may not know, but we're definitely going to give you something within it that you probably didn't know.
That's right. Today we're going to be talking about the infamous murder case of E.N. Rowell. I feel like I'm sort of becoming the true crime correspondent for this podcast because last time I was talking about the Polly Frisch murders, which happened in Alabama. But today we're going to be talking about a case that happened 20 years after that, right here in Batavia. And it's a pretty scandalous, shocking case.
But we do promise this is not just a true crime podcast. Okay?
That's right.
We'll talk about other things. We're just really into this right now. So.
I definitely have it on my brain from doing the Crime and Punishment Genesee County exhibit that we have going on right now. So I'm just sort of inundated with all of these crimes and scandals that happened in the area. So buckle up because we're going to get into it. So let's talk a little bit about the background of who the cast of characters are in this case. Edward Newton Rowell was born in Utica in 1847. He grew up with a man named William Palmer, and William Palmer brought him into the family business to make paper boxes for pills, for powders, for different types of medicines. So here we have two of our important characters for the crime that was later going to happen. We have William Palmer and E.N. Rowell. So E.N. Rowell and Palmer work together. They're starting to have some success in Utica making these small paper boxes. But then in 1881, they suddenly decide, let's move to our company, our paper box making company, to Batavia. And there's probably two reasons for that. One, in the 1880s, Batavia is a boom town. Can you talk a little bit about why that was?
Really, that is the height of the railroad infrastructure here in Batavia, and a lot of our well-known manufacturing comes to Batavia in that time. At the same time as Rowell Box Factory, you have Wired Plow as well as Johnson Harvester, all coming to Batavia at the time because it was easy to ship out goods. The tracks ran literally past some of these factories where they just take them out of the factory, put them on the train, and they're out. So it kept transportation costs to a pretty minimal level and allowed them to really get their products across the country and sometimes even the world.
Exactly. So Batavia was great for business. It was a good business decision to move there from Utica in 1881, which is when they moved. But there was another reason, and that reason was Rowell's wife, Jenny. So Jenny and Rowell had gotten married in 1875. E.N. Rowell had worked with her father, and that's how apparently they met. From the beginning, this wasn't a great partnership. Jenny talked about how when Rowell came to court her, she couldn't really quite tell if he was interested in her or her sister. So he wasn't very affectionate, straight from the beginning. But they do get married in 1875. And in 1877, they moved to Howard Street in Utica. They live in a sort of little middle-class duplex home, and they have two daughters. So everything from the outside seems to be going well. However, it later comes out after the events of everything that happens that Jenny Rowell, when living in Utica, starts to maybe see other people. Rowell has to go out of town a lot for the business, for the paper box business. So he's doing sales trips all the time. He's gone for weeks at a time. Jenny's pretty lonely in Utica. And it is believed that she sort of makes acquaintances with a sort of infamous woman in town, is sort of how it's alluded to in newspapers. And she starts going on these picnics and these excursions with this woman and some of her male friends. And there's one newspaper that sort of accuses her of, oh, you could always see carriages parked outside the house. And inside those carriages were some of the most eligible rich men of Utica, and Jenny Rowell would be seen in those carriages as well. So those are the kind of rumors that are floating around Utica at the time. And Rowell makes the decision, okay, I got to get out of here, bring my wife with me, maybe sort of separate her from this lifestyle. And they moved to Batavia in 1881.
So Jenny was causing a lot of stir with her, the friend she was keeping.
Exactly, with her sort of loose associations.
Gotcha.
And at the time, it wasn't really, a married woman wouldn't really be friends with
Scandalous.
that was very scandalous at the time, to be friends with unattached men. So they moved to Batavia. Everything is calm for about 3 years in Batavia. Nothing really happens. The business continues to grow. Rowell is still going on business trips, but he's made enough money to build a house in Batavia, which is 123 Bank Street, which is still standing. Still there. So you can go by and see this infamous house on Bank Street. They move into this house about a week after it's done. And so they are there, and it is now October of 1882, I believe, or 1883.
83.
It's 83. Okay. It's 83. They're in the house. Then we have to talk about William Palmer, who is Rowell's childhood best friend and business partner. They're in the paper box making company together. So at some point after the move to Batavia, William Palmer starts reading Jenny Rowell's mail. And the way this works is apparently they had some sort of P.O. box at the factory. So all of the family mail was going to this P.O. box. And Palmer starts breaking into that P.O. box and reading the letters that Jenny is getting.
So he still didn't trust Jenny after the move.
He did not trust Jenny, and he did have reason to not trust her. Because, as he later admits, Jenny has said a couple things to him while they all are still living in Utica that are kind of suspicious. Palmer remembers Jenny saying she's going to have a tall boy with a straight nose and that no one at the Rowell residence would be the father. He says this is what she says to him. And when Palmer asks her, how are you getting away with having a gentleman friend? And she said, I'm not worried about him finding out. He's not paying attention, is what Palmer says. He also says that she describes her husband, Rowell, as cold as an iceberg. And that when Palmer asks her what she means by this, she says her husband's lack of affection allows her the privilege of seeking the attention of others.
So she's not even really hiding this.
She's not really hiding this at all, according to Palmer. There's another incident where, maybe I think Rowell is out of town. And so Palmer says, I'll send a boy over from the factory, do some errands for Jenny, just help her with the groceries or whatever. This boy then tells Palmer that she asked him to deliver a note to the law offices of Johnson Lynch. And now here we have another character in our story. So do you remember anything about Johnson Lynch? Like, what do you remember?
So he was a sort of young and dashing lawyer from one of the, upper crust of Utica. Had a distant relation to John Adams, even through the family line. So, this is the upper echelon of society, especially in Utica. And it seemed that he had a fancy for Jenny and vice versa. So they become well acquainted and intertwined, especially in our story.
That is correct. So we believe that Jenny meets Johnson Lynch probably on one of these excursions with her neighbor, where she's going out to like fun events with sort of unmarried men. So part of the reason that Rowell moves his whole family to Batavia is sort of to separate his wife from Johnson Lynch. But does it work is the question. So Palmer is pretty suspicious. He starts breaking into the family mailbox to read her mail. And then two things happen in August of 1883. So a couple of months before everything that takes place. The first thing to happen is Jenny realizes Palmer's going through her mail. She finds out, she goes to the factory in person and publicly calls him out. She says to him in front of all the employees, and this is a quote from her, "It would be a little more agreeable to me to be allowed to read my own letters first." So she embarrasses him pretty bad there because she sort of makes a scene and sort of accuses him of doing this. She also shows a letter to her husband, doesn't show him what's inside the letter, but says, "Look at this. This is like envelope is open. Palmer is going through my mail." And Rowell is kind of weirded out by this. That is kind of weird behavior. He goes, why are you going through my wife's mail? So Palmer has to sort of admit to this. And what he says is like, "I'm doing it for you, man." Like,
he's watching out for his bro.
He's watching out for his bro. Cause he says to her, like, he says, when Rowell says, why are you looking through her mail? He's like, "Well, did you read the letter? Did you read the letter?" Because if you had read the letter, what you would know is that she is corresponding with Johnson Lynch. And then Palmer admits to Rowell that when Rowell was gone on a sales trip, he heard that Jenny was going on a trip. She had like sent word to the factory being like, "Hey, can you send some kid over to do some errands? I'm going on a trip." This makes Palmer suspicious. So he figures out where she's gone, like what train she took, finds out that she went to Rochester. He follows her there, goes to the hotel where he thinks she's staying and looks at the guest book because apparently like you would sign in on this sort of like public guest book.
Yep.
And he sees her name in there and Johnson Lynch's name in there. So he's sort of got this proof. But it's interesting that it takes for like Rowell confronting him for him to admit any of this.
Well, it seems like Rowell's not necessarily in denial, but he's not paying attention. And that Palmer coming in with all this information probably is weirding him out a little bit and saying that you're going to all these lengths to, bring down Jenny's, honor. And why didn't you? He's probably thinking, why didn't you come to me sooner? Or how do I not know any of this? So
we will get into it a little bit later too. But basically, the sort of prevailing opinion in Batavia at the time and all the newspapers is that Palmer probably wanted Jenny for himself.
That's probably a reasonable assumption in terms of, how involved he gets in this.
And then it's people's opinion that because she sort of embarrasses him at the factory and sort of like is like, "Why are you being kind of a creep?" that he's kind of like, "Okay, I'm just gonna like tell her husband what's going on."
He's burning that bridge.
So basically Palmer has told Rowell all of this information now. Together they hatch a plot to embarrass Johnson Lynch. They want to catch them in the act. Mm-hmm. So together, Palmer and Rowell decide, here's what they think they're going to do. Rowell will tell Jenny he's going on a sales trip. Instead of leaving town, Rowell's going to book himself into the National Hotel on the west side of Jackson Street, right next to the train depot. So he can, from a window in the National Hotel, sort of watch who is coming into Batavia. Palmer will monitor the Rowell mailbox at the factory and intercept communication between Jenny and Lynch to see if they're arranging a meeting. Now, he's already doing that. So.
Yeah, it sounds like he's just continuing it as part of the plan here.
Yes. So after Rowell sees Lynch getting off the train, he will follow him back to 123 Bank Street, secretly enter the house after Lynch has gone in, and hide either on the first floor or the cellar. Then he's supposed to open a window so Palmer and then two other guys that they've gotten into the scheme will climb through into the house. And then Rowell will throw open the door to where Lynch and Jenny are hanging out. He will throw on the lights, and he's going to rub pepper into Lynch's eyes. And while he's momentarily blinded, they're going to whip him with like a rock in a sock. And then they're going to overpower him, strip him of his clothing, and mail the clothing to different family members and newspapers in Utica. And so, like, humiliate him, basically, and then put him...
pretty extravagant plan here.
Very detailed. They even, like, know which, like, newspapers they're going to send it to. They're like, we're going to send his trousers to his mother. Like, they've thought it all out. They've thought it through. And they're like, we're going to put him on a train pretty much naked, humiliate him, embarrass him. Like, this will be the end of this. That is the plan. But then we get to the day that this is supposed to happen. So it is Monday, October 29th, 1883. This is what actually occurs. So they're in 123 Bank Street. Rowell tells his wife, I have to go on a business trip. He stops by the factory where Palmer is, tells him the trap has been set, that he's going to check into the National Hotel. Rowell goes to the National. The staff observe him being very weird. He's pacing around. He's erratic. At one point, he goes up to the bartender and asks for some red pepper and for a woman's sock. He pulls out a stone, shows it to the bartender, and says he wants to put it in the sock to make the slingshot that he's going to whip Lynch with.
This is just an everyday conversation you have at the bar.
Everyday conversation. How this got brought up is, like, fascinating to me, and I wish we had a record of it. He even shows a picture of Jenny to the bartender and says, I'm after the son of a bitch that's after this woman. He is being very clear with everybody what his plan is.
And he's a major businessman in town, so most people probably know who he is.
Right.
So he's not hiding what's going on here.
Not at all. There's even a moment where the bartender goes like, oh, sorry, I don't have any pepper. So he goes to like a grocery store and asks like the kid at the counter, hey, can I have some pepper? Don't give it to me in a bag. Just pour it straight into my pocket is what he says. So that comes up in the trial because the kid is like, that was really weird. So he is acting very sketchy all over town. Everybody's noticing. So he's at the National Hotel. Jenny immediately writes to Johnson Lynch. And we actually have a copy of the letter. She writes to him, Dearest John, I am alone. R went away this morning. He will be absent 2 weeks or longer. Agreeable to you, I should be glad to see you some evening this week, say Thursday or Friday. Can you not get here at 6 and come up to tea soon afterwards? We'll try to have the chicks. These are her and Rowell's 2 daughters. They have 2 young daughters who are about 6 and 7, I want to say. Mm-hmm. In Dreamland at 7. Let me hear from you soon. We'll look for a letter Wednesday. Affectionately yours, Jenny L.
So not even Jenny at R. She's
Correct.
Still using her maiden name.
Correct. So she falls for the trap. She sends for Johnson Lynch. The next day, Tuesday, October 30th, Palmer intercepts Lynch's reply. Lynch says, can't wait that long. I'm coming to Batavia this day to see you today. Mm-hmm. So Palmer brings the news to Rowell at the hotel, says it's on, he's coming. And he gives Rowell a 5-shot 23 caliber Taylor No. 3 revolver. Hands that to him.
Step up from a slingshot.
Step up from the slingshot. Apparently, like, there's some, like, confusion over, like, did Rowell ask him to do this? Did he just give it to him? But nevertheless, Palmer gives Rowell a gun. Rowell sits and waits at the National Hotel. He is stewing. Around 6:03 p.m. that evening, he sees Johnson Lynch getting off the train and heading towards Bank Street. So he follows. He enters silently through a back door of the house. He climbs the back stairs. And unlike their plan, he hides himself in a small bedroom on the upstairs. It's about 8 feet away from the bedroom that he and Jenny share.
Basically right next door.
Right next door to the bedroom. And that's kind of important because he later says kind of what spurs him into action is that he can hear his wife and her lover in his bedroom.
As we like to say, the creaking of bed springs.
Exactly. So he jumps into action. He throws open the door like he planned, but in his rush, he forgets to turn on the lights. So it's dark in the bedroom. He can't actually see where Lynch is.
He probably even misses trying to turn on the lights because he's in such a rush to do this.
That's very possible. So what he does is he takes the pepper in his pocket. He sort of throws it in the general direction of the bed, hoping to get it in Lynch's eyes. But he misses, probably, obviously. So things are already going wrong. He immediately, without figuring out if the pepper worked, he pulls the revolver and shoots wildly at the bed. So the first bullet strikes right between Lynch and Jenny, and it's so close to hitting them that gunpowder residue is found on Lynch's face, and Jenny has a cut on her face, probably from the bullet grazing her cheek. So very, very close to hitting his wife, and also this man. Like, he doesn't care. He's shooting
It has
crazy.
unraveled quickly.
It has unraveled very, very quickly. He shoots again. The second bullet goes wide. It buries into the plaster of the wall. Now, Johnson Lynch jumps up from the bed, understandably. He's being shot at.
He knows something is up at this point.
He knows something's up. He's scared for his life. He jumps out of the bed. One thing about Johnson Lynch, he is described in newspapers as Herculean in build. He's about 180 pounds. He's at least 5'10", maybe taller. And Rowell is a small guy. He's about 5 foot tall. He weighs about 110 pounds. He's a pretty slight man.
Drastic difference in stature here.
Correct. Which actually is important because later on he'll be like, I was afraid of my life of this giant man like running at me. So Johnson Lynch jumps up from the bed. He rushes at Rowell, who kind of backs out of the room. Lynch sees his shot and takes it. He runs for the stairs, which are sort of like behind Rowell.
Mm-hmm.
He's running down the stairs. Rowell turns, follows, shoots at Lynch a second time. And this time he hits him. The bullet goes into Johnson Lynch's back. It ricochets down his body. It damages his lungs and it severs his aorta. And he's running down the stairs. Rowell pulls the slingshot, finally. Don't know why that wasn't the first move. He whips it at Lynch's head, but Lynch is already falling, and he's dead before he hits the ground because he's had massive, massive internal trauma because of the third bullet.
Mm-hmm.
He falls dead to the ground, inches away from the door to Bank Street, where he would have been safe in the dark because Rowell probably wouldn't have been able to hit him. So he is dead. He's deceased immediately. This causes a crazy commotion. Jenny comes running down the stairs. She's screaming. She says, how could you? How could you? You'll be hanged for this. The neighbors on either side.
The whole neighborhood's up at this point.
Oh, yeah. The neighborhood that hears something's going on. Rowell goes out onto his front porch, which still exists. The porch that he stood on to call for help is still there. And he cries over the banister to his neighbor, Eugene Swanson. And he says, who calls over, what's the trouble over there? And Rowell says, for God's sake, come over quick. I have shot a man. So the neighbor goes over, is like, okay, this guy is dead. He and another neighbor send for the police. So Rowell is arrested. Immediately you see what the reaction is going to be from Batavia and from the townspeople. The deputies don't even cuff him. They're like, hey man, we're just going to have to walk you to the jail cell. As they're walking him there, Rowell is spilling his guts. He is explaining the plot. He's explaining what happened. He's like, I didn't try to kill him. The pistol, it just kills so quick. I didn't mean to. They're like, hey, maybe you should stop talking and wait till you get a lawyer. The deputies say this to him. They're like, hey, man, we're on your side.
This is Miranda rights and everything. So.
Right, exactly. So he gets to the jail and he puts in a plea of not guilty. The police search his pockets. They realize he has the picture of Jenny still on him. He says, for God's sake, don't take that. And they let him keep the picture of Jenny in his jail cell. And he is in jail from the time of the shooting, October 30th, until his trial begins January 19th of the next year. So he's in there for about 3 months. Mm-hmm. So first, before the trial, there is a grand jury to determine what the charges should be. So they meet the third week of November, and they ultimately decide on a charge of manslaughter, first-degree manslaughter, and not first-degree murder. So basically, the difference between those is first-degree manslaughter was defined as the killing of a person with a deadly weapon in an act of passion. And it differed from murder in the first degree because of this element of intent, right? So manslaughter, the person didn't intend to bring death on the victim, while the first-degree murder charge would mean that the victim's death was the desired outcome from the outset. So it's...
Basically, he accidentally killed him.
Exactly. Was it premeditated or not, basically? So the grand jury immediately is like, okay, well, enough people on the grand jury are sympathetic to him and what he did, and they want him to walk free completely. There's other people who say, no, this should be a first-degree murder charge, like, obviously. And so the compromise that the grand jury finds is this charge of first-degree manslaughter. So that's what they're going to try him for. The newspapers are super sympathetic to him. Right away, Jenny Rowell's lifestyle is more on trial than the husband's crime, right? The Utica Globe reports that the defense was going to seek testimony tracing Jenny's behavior back to the day the Rowells moved to Utica. So the defense was going to put before the court a record of, quote, illicit intercourse between Jenny, Lynch, other men, and even some other women. So they are trying to smear her.
They are going to bury her character. This is very much like quintessential Gilded Age, Victorian age. The woman is put on trial for her actions, even though she's not actually the one on trial. It's her questionable, friendships that are really the story, not the guy who killed somebody in his house.
Correct. And the newspapers have a field day talking about how Utica, Batavia, Syracuse, Rochester, all of these towns in the area, all of the eligible men are suddenly finding reasons to go on business trips. They're joking in the newspapers of like, oh, like it seems for some reason that like all these men have somewhere else to be all of a sudden. And there's one newspaper that says, she must have been, to say the least, a very sociable woman. In fact, when the news first broke, it was believed that it was a local man who was shot. The friends of various men in Batavia breathed easier when they saw them alive. So right away, they get started on sort of, maligning her character.
So essentially, it's her fault that he ended up killing her lover.
Exactly. And he should not really be punished. It's really sort of on her. And, it's sort of a case where people, the sort of like moral values of the time really come to light. Because people want to make an example of this. They want to use this case as an example of why the state needs to pass a bill against adultery. They want to...
The moral code.
Exactly. So this case sort of taps into a lot of sort of moral anxieties of the time about sort of women and their place in the world. So it's really got people heated. So now let's skip to Rowell's trial. So it's now January 19th, 1884. The scene is the old Genesee County Courthouse, which still stands today. Even as the trial begins, everyone in Batavia knows that this is going to be a huge one. It's going to be a very famous event in the community. There's reporters from all over. The Associated Press sends people. The New York Times reports on it. The National Police Gazette. Like, this is getting national news. And the Batavia News reports that before the case, they printed 1,700 copies of each edition. I think it's daily. The day after the shooting, their copies jumped to 5,000 a day. So
wow.
Their circulation is tripled by this case. It's massive, this scandal. It is then very hard to find a jury for the trial.
Because everybody knows about it.
Everybody knows about it, and everybody is sympathetic to Rowell about it. One guy from Oakfield he's like, I can't be on the jury because I would have done the same thing. Honestly, that's the excuse he gives. It takes almost 2 days, and 119 potential jurors have to be interviewed in order to find some who are going to be neutral. So let's talk a little bit about like what the issue is. What is on trial here? They have to figure out Rowell's state of mind at the time the shot was fired to decide like what his intent was, his motive in going to the house, whether Rowell felt threatened by Lynch and therefore shot him in self-defense, whether Rowell was insane, temporary insanity at the moment he shot Lynch. They're going to talk about Lynch's character, especially as it compared to Rowell's character. And then sort of overarching all of this is sort of the rules under which Victorian society operated. So like your moral character was very much on trial.
So you have to put all of this against what's happening during that time period.
Yeah.
And you have to look at how these factors fit into Victorian eras in society and how they play for it or against it.
Correct.
That's not like an argument, but that is how everything is framed in this, is the moral code of that time period.
Correct.
Is what they're going to compare all of this against.
Exactly. So in effect, the question is, does a husband have the right to shoot his wife's lover if he finds the two in bed together? Right? So the defense's argument that they're going to go with is temporary insanity, right? They contend Rowell was stressed. He was very anxious. He was very wrought over his wife's behavior. And of course, he wasn't sane at the moment he fired the shot. Therefore, he must be acquitted on the basis of insanity.
Well, he wasn't acting very sane for a lot of that, it seems. So maybe this is a very plausible defense.
Exactly. Like, remember, the staff at the National Hotel sees him acting very erratic. He's sort of like pacing around. He's
got a pile of pepper in his pocket.
Exactly.
I mean, that's not something a sane person probably does, But there is some evidence that maybe this could be a plausible defense.
Correct. They also hammer home the immoral character of Lynch, right? They talk about he has this he travels without money. He just sort of gets money from his rich family. And he, worst of all, quote, gratified his lust in the best beds of other men, quote, unquote. Because basically the defense is they realize that the jury is all made up of local farmers. And these local farmers work 14-hour days. You know, they stress a lot about money and like where it's coming, like how to pay for everything that they need. This man who's just like a rich playboy is like offensive to them.
Yes, they're going to play that up as much as they can.
Yeah. Part of that strategy is they try to admit into evidence that Lynch's body, they found 3 letters from 3 different married women on his body. So they try to put that into evidence. It doesn't work, but like they at least like get the jury to know that. They imply that he wasted his good heritage. Again, he's a great-grandson of John Adams. Like, he's from a very wealthy, privileged family. They say, he's just wasting all of his potential. They really hammer him hard. They also have an interesting argument in that at this time, sort of because marriage was seen as sort of a contract or sort of almost like a property agreement, that Lynch's behavior, or Lynch like going into Rowell's house and hooking up with his wife, was tantamount to robbing his house, right?
Trespassing.
Yes.
Taking what was not his and what was Lynch's.
Correct. A book I read said, quote, Lynch's intimacy with Jenny Rowell was no different under these rules than if he had ransacked the bureau of Rowell's private rooms, removing the most valuable treasures. In the Rowell household, Jenny was a jewel defiled by Lynch, basically.
That would be, the common argument and why it would be self-defense, because think of it, if a thief came into your home and was robbing you, if you happened to shoot them, they could say, yes, it's self-defense. This person was in your home, was threatening you in a way. It's they really did just kind of make a one-to-one comparison and say he was taking something from you.
Yes. And they also try out another sort of angle, which is that because of Lynch's size in relation to Rowell's size, when he jumped up from the bed and like sort of rushed at the door, Rowell feared for his life.
Even though he'd already fired twice at him, but we're not going to make a big deal out of that.
Yeah, we're going to hand wave those 2 shots away. So the prosecution knows it's going to be a really tough case. They do have the law on their side. For example, Rowell was hid in the house for an hour and a half while Lynch was present and didn't make himself known.
It's not like he just walked in on this.
Correct. He had come armed with lethal weapons, and he also had Confederates that were to arrive and help him punish the transgressor.
They discovered this the supposed plan very quickly.
So not only did he have weapons on him, he didn't really try to use the lesser weapons, the less lethal weapons. He kind of threw the pepper, but immediately after he pulls the revolver, not the slingshot. So that also looks pretty bad. And one of the biggest problems the prosecution has is this charge of manslaughter, which had been brought down by the grand jury. Because if they had a first-degree murder charge, they could show planning and deliberate intent. But because of the manslaughter charge, they have to show that he had passion and anger, but not intent. But they can't rely too much on a passion and anger argument, because then the defense might say, well, he's insane.
Yes. So they're really between a rock and a hard place, because all the evidence shows intent, but because of the manslaughter charge, the intent has already been determined wasn't there.
Right.
So most of their evidence doesn't necessarily add to their case. It would be, their evidence would prove that it was murder, but that's not what he's on trial for.
Exactly. And also, they have basically the whole community against them.
Yes.
The whole, the moral opinion of the town is that Rowell shouldn't be punished for this.
Exactly. The community is backing Rowell 100% in this. I think they'd be hard-pressed to find any sympathetic forces to Jenny and Johnson Lynch. And that's going to contribute to this trial, definitely.
Right. So basically what comes up in this trial is the main issue, the main conflict is not really the actual events or what happened. That's pretty clear. It's whether or not Palmer or Rowell came up with the plan. If that makes sense, because the defense wants it to be all on Palmer.
They're finding another scapegoat.
Yes. But then the prosecution wants to, say the prosecution is saying, no, it was Rowell. And then the defense is saying, no, it was Palmer. So Palmer takes the stand. It's standing room only in the Genesee County Courthouse. People are hanging on every word. So basically we find out, and this makes Palmer look so bad, is that he was having tons of sort of incidences or sort of contact with Jenny Rowell that for the time period is very suspicious and sort of seen as very inappropriate. So at one point he's joking with Jenny, and she says to him that with the exception of Lynch, she's never been more intimate with any man than she has with Palmer. Palmer has to admit this on the stand. Yep. Everyone's like, oh, you're a dirtbag. Got it. And he's like, no, we're just friends. And then he's forced to admit on the stand also that he had some physical contact with Jenny. The defense attorney on cross-examination asks him if he's ever kissed Jenny. And Palmer says he has. But he's like, oh, but it's fine. It was we're just hugging because we're friends. And then he says they were not actuated by any base motives. And he says, we're just really close as we're family friends. We're really close. He then goes on to say, when I'm hugging her, it's always been in the company of Rowell or his own wife or both. And he says, I often engaged in a romp with her in the presence of her husband and my own wife. And he's trying to say, it's fine. We're just close. Mm-hmm. The newspapers have a field day with it.
Oh, they're going to run with this part.
They ran with it. They were Palmer is trying to get it on with Rowell's wife. He is a dirtbag. He is self-serving. He is not just trying to help out his buddy by like getting him involved in this plot. And Palmer is really upset about like what the newspapers are saying about him. So he like talks to every reporter he can find trying to set the record straight. And like he keeps like digging himself deeper into this hole. And the Utica Press is like, this guy's a dirtbag. They say, quote, he sees no harm in taking someone else's wife on his lap and would not object if any man wanted to do a similar favor for his better half. So everyone thinks like Palmer sucks. At one point, the newspapers label it the Palmer-Rowell tragedy.
Okay.
So they really are like, you had a hand in this, dude. Like, don't try to get away with it. So, okay, so everything has been put into evidence. All of this shocking news comes forth. The audience is like, they should have handed out popcorn. People are applauding. People are gasping as things come to light.
This is the main entertainment in Batavia for months.
This is the big thing, for sure. So some time passes. Now it's time to deliberate and for the verdict to be passed. 6:40, the jury goes to deliberate. One unnamed juror, he goes, okay, let's organize. He calls for everyone who felt Rowell should be found not guilty to go to one wall. Those who were for a guilty verdict should go to the opposite. All 12 men immediately go to the not guilty wall. And then they're like, oh, wait, yeah, we have to figure out, is it insanity or is it self-defense? Immediately, so he goes, okay, raise your hand if you think it's self-defense. They all raise their hands. Immediate. It takes 2 minutes to decide that he is not guilty on the basis of self-defense.
That is maybe the quickest deliberation ever.
Yes. There's a funny thing where they talk about how like the jurors are going up to like deliberate and like before they go, they're like given some mints. I think they're at like a hotel or something. They're like, here, have some like after dinner mints. Mm-hmm. They decide he's not guilty before they even finish the mints. It's crazy. So the whole town goes nuts. You know, there's parties in the streets. Rowell is taken to the Washburn House, which I think was a like bar on like Main Street. There's like crowds of people like wanting to hear from him. He goes out. He's like, thank you for, you know, supporting me, blah, blah, blah. Like the whole town is like, yes, we did it. The only dissenting opinion in a newspaper is the New York Times, who goes, hello? Like he definitely, this was premeditated. What are you talking about? That's the only one. Everyone else is like, this is justice. We did it, folks. And yeah, Rowell gets off. He is declared not guilty. And he goes on with his life. And Ryan, can you tell us a little bit about what happens to Ian Rowell after the trial?
So Rowell doesn't come off completely unscathed, at least in his personal life. He goes back, you know, and takes over his old life as if nothing happens, but everybody else in the house is very traumatized by this.
Yeah.
Jenny you've already heard Jenny say, you'll hang for this. Like, she's assured he's gone and she will not have to deal with him. Obviously, that hasn't gone her way. So she basically decides, I'm never coming back here. Goes back to Utica, takes the kids with her for a time, but really has nothing to do with the family. Leaves the kids with Rowell. Has no custody, eventually makes her way out west and marries a very wealthy guy out in Colorado a few years later, and, you know, lives out the rest of her life out that way. So she finds another person to, you know, keep her lifestyle going. And so far away from Utica that I don't think she's continuing on those trice, but maybe she's doing stuff in Colorado. We don't know. Rowell then has to kind of fight with the fact of, okay, his wife is now gone. He's got to deal with his young daughters and basically ships them off to Utica to stay with his family. And he's staying in Batavia to focus on the business. He supersedes Rowell. It now becomes the Rowell Box Factory. He is in charge. Eventually builds a brand new factory right on Ellicott Street near the intersection with Main Street. Today it would be where the new county courthouse is, and it's a massive facility and even shares it with other companies such as the Mathis Shell Company for a time because that's how large it is, so they can fit multiple companies in there. And he becomes a very wealthy man.
Yeah, maybe
Well,
one of the richest in Batavia.
Yes, he is at the the peak of Batavia society. So eventually he decides to get remarried. When he's 68, he marries 40-year-old Mary May Emka, who actually worked at the box factory, was one of his secretaries, and so they get married in 1914. And he builds what we know is the Rowell Mansion on the corner of Ellicott and Richmond for her as her wedding present. So that's not where the murder takes place. That is his second home, his grand home after he's made all his money and now with his new wife. Basically, Rowell is the top of Batavia society. He doesn't get to enjoy everything for a very long time as he's in his elder days, and he passes away in 1929.
Right.
He is buried in Grandview Cemetery. If you go see his monument, it actually looks very much like the front porch of the Rowell Mansion with columns and everything. It is very grand. But Mary May Emka continues to run the company up until its ending in the very early 1980s, but she runs it basically by herself until this 1970s, when it eventually kind of ceases to be, though it's still in name for a few more years. So we also get, at the end of this, a women-owned business, a very successful women-owned business for about 50 years.
Yeah, and I read something that May Emka, like when she died, her estate was, I think it was some millions of dollars. So like they did very well for themselves.
Yes, so she basically carries on the business and makes it successful still in a time when we think about paper boxes kind of going out of fashion. It continues for a while. And so the business almost makes it to, a century of time in Batavia.
Yeah.
So, there are some kind of silver linings to this in the end, but Rowell definitely left his mark on this city and this county with this scandal, but also sort of the business side of this, which had to have had an impact on the trial. If he was just some regular guy, maybe this, the trial goes differently. Maybe it doesn't, but I think his influence in the community had to have some sort of impact. People knew who he was. His factory did employ a good number of people. So him going to jail for murder or manslaughter would have hurt the business for sure.
Yeah.
But it does reflect more so on the Victorian ideals of the time and how people perceived honor and property and women's rights and this concept of what is yours and nobody is there to take it, which includes your wife and family members. So.
Right. It's a very interesting period of time in Batavia history and Genesee County history. And I find that a lot of people don't know about it, even though, Rowell was a very prominent member of this community for a while. I know it was a long time ago, but yeah, it's a very interesting story. And we do talk about it in the Crime and Punishment exhibition at the museum. So do stop by.
Yes, so this really is sort of at the, I think, transition point for Batavia. Really, it starts to become a city, and it has everything that comes with a city, both the good and the bad, start to really come to the forefront because you see a lot of different types of crime come about, but you have all these factories coming in, all these new people coming in. You have a second wave of immigration really starting to pull up. So Batavia is going from somewhat of a backwater to a place where people are coming to live and work, and everything that comes along with that shows up at the same time.
Very true.